Great. Well, I have 5 o'clock. So welcome everyone to Mountain Minds Monday, a program of Tahoe Silicon Mountain. We're going to go ahead and get started. So again, welcome. Mountain Minds Monday has been going on for over 10 years as a program of Tahoe Silicon Mountain, and this is our fourth month of offering our program on a virtual basis. So thank you for joining us, whether it's live or you're watching us later. We do have 2 monthly events. The first of those is our educational topic and speaker series called Mountain Minds Monday. That's what you're attending right now. And that is broadcast over YouTube. We have another monthly program called First Friday at 4, which is an entrepreneurs roundtable. We have that on hiatus until we're able to join together in person again. We have 2 annual events, one of which is our Pitch Camp and Pitch Showcase, which we hold in conjunction with the Sierra Business Council, and you should watch social media for announcements about that. We're just opening applications for companies to participate in the Pitch Camp. Next month's Mountain Minds Monday is an exciting speaker again. Terry Jones, oops, looks like I did not update the subtitle, but Terry Jones is a wonderful author. He's going to be presenting on innovation, and that will be the August 10th Mountain Minds Monday. There's several ways of keeping informed. Sounds like we have some people need to be on mute. Several ways of keeping informed: emailing, receiving an email newsletter that's only a few times per month, also through our Facebook group, and you can see our YouTube archives of past events and introductions. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, you can do that in the comments on the YouTube, since we're not able to meet in person right now. There are several ways that we make Mountain Minds Monday and all of Tahoe Silicon Mountain accessible. One way is that we've been live streaming for several years. A second way is that we offer a pay what you can model. A third thing is we've got sponsorships that, when we're in person, allow local high school students with a student ID to participate for free. And we also are always looking for volunteers. Tahoe Silicon Mountain is a 100% volunteer-run organization, and please go ahead and sign up to volunteer if you're able. We do have a suggested donation even for the virtual events, because there is overhead in keeping the nonprofit organization rolling, live streaming to you and keeping you informed. So if you go to TahoeSiliconMountain.com, you'll find a donate button in the upper right-hand side. You can even make it easy on yourself and make it a recurring donation, as I've done, where it comes out of my account monthly. So some of the reasons why we do need the donations: we are a nonprofit, which means your donations are tax deductible, and we have bookkeeping and tax filing to keep our 501c3 status. We do coordinate a live stream. You're watching on the live stream or an extra recording of it, either through YouTube or on our local TV station. And we have technology subscriptions and marketing expenses and the event costs when we're in person for the venue and food. So again, please do make that $5 donation if you're able. Again, upper right-hand corner on the TahoeSiliconMountain.com website. We do have an all-volunteer board. This is the 5 of us right now, but we're always looking to expand. And so if you're interested in getting involved in Tahoe Silicon Mountain, please do reach out. We're fortunate to have some wonderful sponsors who have been with us for quite some time. Our gold sponsor for many years has been the Holland and Hart Law Firm. Mobo Law is our silver sponsor, and we have several community partners: Nevada County Tech Connection, Tahoe Truckee Media. We have some grant support from the Truckee-Tahoe Airport District. When we have in-person events, we hold some of them at the Lyft Workspace, which is a co-work space over by the airport. The Chamber of Commerce has been a wonderful community partner. And when we're back in person, some of our events are held in Tahoe Donner, so another of our community partners. Thank you to all of our partners that allow us to make this happen. you too can become a sponsor. And here's the link for how to get in touch with us and learn about the different sponsorship levels. So I'm very excited about tonight's event. It's very timely, given what we're all going through with our health pandemic and the stress that that's creating for a lot of people. I want to direct your attention to the bottom of the screen. The way that you'll be getting questions into us is by sending an email to megan@tahoesiliconmountain.com or asking in the YouTube comments, and Megan will ask the question on your behalf. So one of our board members has seen Marcia present a similar presentation before and was so excited to bring it to our Tahoe Silicon Mountain community. And Marcia has been an educator and mental health clinician for over 30 years. She loves sharing information and resources, helping community members increase their mental health literacy and making their lives easier and more enjoyable. So again, tonight's topic, Minds at Work, how to keep everyone from flipping their lid. So I'm just going to take a moment and turn over control to Marcia so she can begin her presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellen. And yeah, so I want to thank Ellen and everyone else that is here tonight. And it was Ed who had attended a training I did for a huge group of consultants from the SBA and SBDC. Similar to what I'm going to share with you, this was back in April at the beginning of a lot of the COVID-19 sheltering in place, shut down your businesses. And so these SBA and SBD consultants were not only getting stressed out with their amount of work they had to do, but they were working with a lot of clients who were overwhelmed, stressed, scared, and really needed some idea on how do we manage this? Everyone's freaking out. What do we do? And so I was lucky enough to get asked to do a presentation for that group that then Ed said, wow, let me bring this to my Tahoe Silicon group. And so thank you for having me today. It's a Monday evening, and usually I say, don't just turn your phone on or your computer on and go to sleep, but I can't see any of you anyway, so you're either live or watching this later. But I want to challenge you to stay present. I have some information about our brain, stress, especially chronic stress, which I feel, like Ellen said, is very timely. So please be present. I have 45 minutes. I'm used to doing like 1 day or 2 day training. But luckily I have severe ADHD. So I'm going to be able to get a lot packed into this 40 minutes or so. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So managing emotions and conflict, that's what we're going to talk about. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the brain in a very simplified way, right? The brain is where all of our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, actions come from. If we have a better understanding of how that all works, especially under stress, we'll have a better understanding on how to manage it and have more empathy for the folks that are really, really struggling right now. We're going to look at behavior. What causes our behavior to go from, I'm doing fine to I'm freaking out or flipping out or losing it? What is it about stress and the way we're thinking or feeling that creates different behaviors? We're going to look at, again, the brain, not only the brain, but under pressure. What's going on when that stress response system kicks in? And what it helps us to do is understand what's going on in our body, right? And it's this innate thing that's been going on for eons and eons, right? And we may think, oh, it doesn't happen to me, but it's at the cellular level that this stuff is happening. So we're going to review that tonight. The stress response system is what kicks in when we feel overwhelmed. So we're going to talk about what are a few of those major pieces and parts of the stress response system and what's happening with our hormones, with our brain chemicals, with our all our different systems in our body. We're going to look at, okay, so we know all that bad stuff's happening. We know we're under a lot of stress. What do we do about it? How can we mitigate, especially long-term effects of stress on our body and our body systems? So we're going to figure out what is this thing called regulating our emotions? What does it take? And then this awesome thing called co-regulation, which tells us that how we're feeling and acting has a huge impact on the people around us, right? So you've probably heard, you know, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. That's because of co-regulation. And then we're gonna finish off with non-defensive listening. Even though we're stressed or we're working with people that are stressed, how can I still be a good listener and keep us both from, or one of us from, freaking out or flipping out? And then my final thing to share with you are resources, COVID related, especially because that's what a lot of us are dealing with, but in relation to each of these things that we talk about. So that's our agenda. Here we go. First off, the brain. Now, this is a really simplified model of the brain, right? We're going to look at, think about the brain as just three main parts, okay? The reptilian, the limbic, and the neocortex, okay? And know that the brain has developed and does grow from the bottom up and from the back forward, right? So a lot of you have probably heard in the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, we know why teens do what they do. It's because that prefrontal cortex in the front of their brain isn't quite done developing till we're like, we used to think 20 and then 25, and now it's up to around 30. So a simple model of the brain shows us these three main parts. The one, reptilian, been around for a long time. Limbic, we're going to talk a little more about, and then that cortex, the thinking part of the brain. We're going to look at a hand model. So Dan Siegel is this amazing scientist who can take the brain and its functions and show it in a hand model that helps simplify it and can give a good graphic demonstration of how, that's someone in the waiting room, how the brain works together. Okay, then we're going to talk about using that model. What is flipping our lid? What happens in our brain when we go from I'm calm to I'm freaking out and yelling and screaming or cussing or having a tantrum or whatever? So all my trainings that I do are based on adult learning. So it's not just me talking for 45 minutes. I have a few videos that I want to share with you. So this first one helps us look at this simplified brain and a little bit about what each part does.
Now, you probably know the name Dan Siegel. He's one of the giants in the field of interpersonal.
Okay, you know what? I think when I shared, I forgot to click on one thing. So sorry, I'm going to go back out and share again because I did not share my sound and video. 5 minutes. I have a few. Okay. Okay, sorry, Megan, were you saying something? Okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay, so here we are with Dan Siegel, telling us about the brain.
Personal neurobiology, and Dan. Know the name Dan Siegel. He's one of the giants in the field of interpersonal neurobiology, and Dan came up with a lovely hand model of the human brain. So let's kind of go through the hand model of the brain. And this can be useful for you to understand, but at times it might be useful for you to actually share this with your client. The wrist, the forearm coming up to here, is like your spinal cord. And Right here at the end of the wrist is like the base of your skull. And here at the bottom of your palm, this is like the reptile brain, the life support system of the brain. So, you know, if the rest of your brain is wiped out through, say, for example, a stroke or a car accident, this life support part of your brain, the reptile brain, can still keep your body alive, can still keep all your organs functioning and your breath and your heart and so forth. And this is where a lot of autonomic nervous system operates and stems from this reptile brain. Now, above the reptile brain is the mammalian brain, often called the limbic brain or the emotional brain. So reptiles, they've got the fight or flight response, or they've got the freeze, shut down, flop and drop response, but they don't really have anything that is even remotely close to the complex emotional states that we see in mammals. And the limbic brain has many different parts to it, but two in particular that we'll be looking at in this course are the amygdala and the hippocampus. Now, don't worry about memorizing those terms for now. We will revisit them later. But this kind of is the middle brain, the limbic brain, the mammalian brain, basically responsible for emotions. Now, on top of the limbic mammalian emotional brain, you've got the cerebral cortex, the thinking cap of the brain. This cerebral cortex is much thicker in mammals, but especially so in primates, and particularly so in human beings, more so than any other primate. And this cerebral cortex, the thinking part of the brain, responsible for consciousness and cognition. And right at the front of the cerebral cortex, you have the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's right up here at the front of your forehead, above your eyes. And particularly important to us is the medial prefrontal cortex, this bit in the middle, right at the front, this bit up here. This plays a very important role in mindfulness and awareness. So let's just go through it again. You've got your spinal cord, you've got your reptile brain. Underneath your cerebral cortex, you've got your mammalian brain with the amygdala, the hippocampus, responsible for emotions. And then you've got your cerebral cortex, your thinking cap of the brain on top, and the medial prefrontal cortex right here in the center at the front, right there.
Okay. I'd like everyone to go back to that. Sorry about that. If you can raise your hand, I'm going to bring back my video so I can see a few people that are there. Let's physically go through this really quick because it helps to remember what's going on, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take our thumb, which is our amygdala, which is that emotion part of the brain, and fold it in, right? On top of that is our thinking part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, part of that neocortex that folds over. Now, when a brain is functioning optimally, right, the two parts are connected, they're sending signals back and forth, they're communicating, and everything's going fine, right? But let's say we start to get a little bit stressed out, we start to get a little bit frustrated, anxious, worried, whatever, and our amygdala starts having more activity in it. So start wiggling your thumb. So as that amygdala starts activating more, what happens if it increases and your emotions escalate is pretty soon you flip your lid. Now what's happened is that amygdala, your feeling, emotional, fear part of your brain, and the thinking part of your brain, the cortex, are no longer communicating. It's like those connections have been shut off. And now who's in control? The amygdala, right? So when people are at a heightened sense of anxiety, stress, worry, what's controlling their behaviors and their thoughts and their feelings is just everything coming from that fear or emotional part of their brain. So remembering that physical hand model can help us have a better understanding of what happens in the brain in a simple way. Okay, so let's look at behavior. So what happens is, and again, this is a simplified model. This is called the cognitive triangle. And what it tells us is in our brain, our behaviors and actions, our thoughts and our beliefs, and our emotions and feelings are all connected, right? And these, this CBT triad shows with the arrows going both ways that each of these things are affected by and affect each other, right? So my thoughts are affected by my emotions and my behaviors. My emotions are affected by my thoughts and my behavior. And likewise, my behavior is affected by my thoughts and my emotions. So that's going to be important when we tie that into what's going on in the brain of someone who's really stressed out. The second thing we need to think about is this concept that perception is reality. So my perception is my reality, but your perception is your reality, right? And we're all seeing things and the world and our life we're experiencing in different ways, right? So one way I like to think about this is if you have siblings and you're ever sitting around talking to your, sisters and brothers about your upbringing, and you're like, what? Mom never said that to me, or no one ever talked to me that way, or I don't remember that happening. You realize that your reality, it was your reality, it's what you lived through, but your perception was tweaked by your DNA, your genetics, your thoughts, emotions, all of that at the time. And so it might not even seem like you grew up in the same household, okay? So we want to keep that in mind because especially now during COVID, as we're all under a lot of stress, your customers and clients that you're working with are probably under a lot of stress. If you're a business owner, you're trying to manage things and you have a lot of worries and concerns. So just know that what you're seeing in your world may be different than what other people are seeing. So your perception is your reality is an important concept. So that's our brain. That's how behavior comes about. So, and here you are, right? You're at work trying to stay positive and you're like squeezing your teddy bear to death. So let's look at when I'm under this stress. Let me get a better understanding of what's going on physiologically, right? At a cellular level, what's happening in my body and in those systems. So the brain under pressure. Actually, I guess we're going to watch the video first. So this is going to point out a few things that are important in what the brain and the body does in reaction to perceived threat.
Have you dreamt of painting the walls inside your RV? Looking for storage solutions? Want to learn how to upgrade?
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
So what that showed us is under pressure, our brain has a lot of different systems that are put into action. The first one is that HPA axis. And as soon as we experience a perceived threat or stress or overwhelm or any number of things that we think create an unsafe environment for us, it releases this flood of cortisol, which is our stress hormone, into all systems of our body. So that HPA axis, that hippocampus that he talked about earlier there in that one part of the brain, is responsible for saying, okay, brain or body, we're going to release all this cortisol because we might need to fight, flight, or flee or freeze, right? And so that's how that has come about. And even though nowadays it might not be that tiger or whatever that's after us, our body still reacts to stressful information, stressful environments, stressful happenings in that same way. So the other thing is, like we showed with that hand model, there's an increased activity in the amygdala, right? The fear center. That increased activity, again, takes over, right? There's only so much blood in our brain. And so if all that blood is rushing to the amygdala to create that, spurt of energy that you might need, then none of it is going, again, to that thinking, logical, consequential part of our brain. And it makes it hard to, make logical decisions or choices. And then it actually affects the signals in our hippocampus by decreasing our ability to manage the stress, right? So those signals are reduced and we're no longer able to manage the stress that's coming on. And then the final thing they talked about is over time, especially chronic stress or a lot of like what we're going through now, basically, it actually affects the architecture of the brain. So it actually strengthens your prefrontal cortex, again, making it hard to make those good decisions. Okay, I'm trying to get rid of that box that's on the side there. Okay, so here, this little guy here, right, is showing us, sometimes when we're under stress. So oftentimes, he's got his little teddy bear. I have a stress brain. You might have a stress ball. Sometimes this helps because it gives that energy that's building up in your body an outlet. So I encourage people to have, a stress ball or something at their desk that can support them when they're feeling that buildup. So now we know it's stress that can be overwhelming. Let's look at how does that exactly affect our behavior, right? So we all have what's called a window of tolerance, right? This is our frustration window of tolerance, right? And what this shows us is this is as much frustration, stress, overwhelm that I can handle without losing it, right? What's within this window. So our self-regulation is our ability to regulate those emotions, regulate what's going on. In other words, it's how do we keep that accelerator and the brakes of emotion in balance, right? We know every day it has ups and downs, right? Throughout our years, throughout our life, everything is up and down. As long as we're well rested, well fed, we're not experiencing a lot of stress, our window of tolerance can be pretty wide, right? Because we're able to handle those ups and downs of life. But what happens is when there's increased stressors, what's now occurring is we still have those ups and downs of our daily life, right? Whatever, stressors we're experiencing, but our window of tolerance is now narrower. So now that dotted line, the amount of input that might be stressful that I'm able to handle without losing it or flipping my lid is now a lot less, right? And think about it, when you're tired, when you're hangry, when you are sick, when there's just a lot of negativity that you're dealing with, your ability to handle frustration becomes a lot lower, right? And so that window of tolerance is more narrow, okay? And this is just typical stress response system, right? So what about experiencing something like COVID? Now, we've got so many more unknowns, so many different variables. Our lives, no matter who you are, where you live, what you do for a living, who your family is, probably almost every part of your life has been impacted. So now, instead of the normal ebbs and flows of life, we've got this jagged, wild, erratic, accelerator and brake thing going on. We might end up way up here in that high area for a while where we're just so stressed out and we're yelling and nothing can calm us down. Or we go down here way to the bottom where we're like, the other day I couldn't get off my porch swing for 3 hours. I'm like, I just cannot do anything right now. So our system, that cortisol and those other hormones and the brain chemicals are sending all those signals to our body that we need to be on high alert, ready to fight or flee, or we need to check out and drop and flop or whatever said on the previous one of the previous slides, right? So this is all happening automatically, right? This is part of our autonomic nervous system. So chronic stress or trauma hijacks our regulation system, right? So that's all the negative, bad news, right? Now for the good news. Thankfully, we're still alive because we have a calming response too. Yes, we have that stress response system, but we also have a calming response, right? So this shows, right, lavender reduces stress. So some of us are like, okay, if lavender works, bring it on, right? Just bury me in it. So what can we do to engage that calming response system? So number one of the most helpful ways is by way of grounding exercises, right? When our brain is under stress, we're often either stressing and regretting things that happened in the past, or we're worried and anxious about things that are going to happen in the future. So over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, they've found that if we can stay in the present moment, if we can be in the present and just focus on what's happening right now, that helps us bring down that stress response system and calm us down. So grounding exercise are able to do that, whether it's breathing, meditation, yoga, mindfulness training, all kinds of different things that can help. So your number one superhero power is your breath, okay? So it's your breath that sends those signals to your brain that I'm either stressed, right? That's why our breath increases when we're stressed or anxious, or that we're calm. So we can use our breath as our remote control for our brain and our body and that calming system. So kind of like if you want to change the channel or turn the TV down and you use your remote, you can use your breath to do the same thing with your stress response system. So if you can even get one skill down to help, that's belly breathing, right? So if you can learn belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, what that does as you take deep breaths into your lungs and into your diaphragm, that sends a lot of oxygen all throughout all cells of your body. And it sends the message through from your brain to your body that you're calm and that you're safe. So I always say the breath is a remote control of your body. Use it, take advantage of that. It's one of the few, that's the quickest way to change that, that accelerator on your stress response system. And then I always say mind-body skills are the antidote to stress. You live a stressful life, right? Everyone's stressed out right now. What can we do about it? Yeah, sleep well, eat well, exercise, but there's also ways that we can use our body to tell our mind that we're okay, just like we would use our mind to tell our body we're okay. So that connection is really, really, really strong and something we want to keep in mind. So let's, she's a licensed marriage family therapist that does this next video for us. And she's going to explain a little more how those mind-body and body-mind skills work and why it's important to help relax that stress response system.
I'd like to do a quick introduction into grounding activities. Being grounded means that you are in your body. You're feeling your emotions and you're aware of your present moment experience. It also means that you're feeling responsible for your safety and well-being. Grounding is an important therapeutic approach for managing anxiety, flashbacks, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and for improving your mental health. Grounding strengthens your parasympathetic response. This is your body's natural ability to return to calm. This parasympathetic response counteracts the fight, flight, or freeze response. PTSD and other anxiety disorders are disordered in their essence because you're feeling like you're in danger when you're actually safe. So your body's having this danger response, this fight, flight, freeze response, when your present moment experience is actually safe. And that's one reason why they're disordered. Anxiety is often about worries about the future, what might happen. And depression is often about discouragement about the past. And both of these can be counteracted with an increase in our ability to be here in the present moment. Most of the time, our present moment is a safe and secure environment. If it's not, we need to leave. So we need to create a safe and secure environment in our present moment. But grounding activities help us activate that safe feeling in our brain by reminding ourselves that here in the present moment, we are safe. When we're grounded and calm, we're able to work through emotions and memories in a healthy way. Our body has a natural ability to resolve trauma or to work through emotions. But when we're panicked or in our fight, flight, freeze, danger response, our brain shuts down those abilities because it thinks that our survival is at stake. We can train ourselves to trigger this calming response by practicing grounding activities. It's important to practice these exercises over and over again so that they become habitual and we can draw on them in moments of stress or anxiety. Many of the grounding activities that I'm going to teach you use your body as a way to create that sense of calm. So these are from the top down. That's partly because our brain, when it feels threatened, it reacts at a very animalistic level. It's using this deep part of our brain in the limbic system and the brainstem to react impulsively or instinctively to danger. So this makes a lot of sense. This is a really functional reaction. So if a tiger jumps out at you, you're not going to be using your thinking part of your brain to be like, I wonder what I should do with this. Your body's going to naturally and instinctively going to run away. So it's going to have this physiological reaction, this fight, flight, freeze response. It turns up your heart rate and it turns up your breathing rate. Since we can't access those deeper survival parts of our brain with our thoughts, the best way to access that calm is through our body. So this is called a bottom-up approach to grounding. Our 5 senses anchor us to our body and our surroundings. Using this bottom-up approach is a much more effective way to treat anxiety and stress than trying to simply change how we think. And by creating that physiological calm, we're able to lay the foundation for future cognitive work. Many of these activities focus on our breathing, and that's because our breathing is something that happens both automatically and we have some degree of control over. So that can help trigger that change in the limbic system that we need to create that physiological calm. Grounding exercises help connect us to our body and help us reassert that sense of self-control. And they reorient us to the safe context that we're actually in the present moment. One of the ways that we gain confidence in our ability to use these grounding exercises is by doing a check-in before and after the exercise. And one way to do that is to do a quick scale. So before you do a grounding exercise, scale your anxiety on a scale from 0 to 10. And then do your grounding activity, and then just check in with yourself again afterwards and put yourself again on the scale from 0 to 10. Now, it's not necessary for you to decrease your anxiety every time. Sometimes a grounding activity is just about increasing your awareness and your contact with the present moment. But if you do these consistently, you will notice a gradual pattern of decreasing your anxiety little by little. We need to be able to notice these small victories because they can add up to large gains over time. Another way you can look at the effects of these grounding activities is to ask yourself these questions before and after. What are you noticing in your body? What are you noticing with your breath? What's happening with your feelings? What's happening with your heart? And what's happening with your thoughts? During these grounding activities, if at any point you need to take a break, that's okay. You can just pause the activity and then come back to it later. When you're initially learning these grounding exercises, the best way to practice is when you're in a place that's quiet, peaceful, and calm. Don't wait until you're stressed out or in a chaotic environment to try them. And again, it's important to practice these activities every day for a few weeks before trying to practice them in a stressful environment. The more you practice them, the more habitual and instinctual they'll become. And you can actually train yourself to calm your body down with just a thought or a word. As you get better and better at grounding, you'll increase your confidence and ability to create that physiological calm even when you're in a stressful situation. And you can gradually use your skills in more and more difficult situations to maintain that sense of calm that we all need to feel safe and happy. Over the next couple of months, I'm making a bunch of grounding videos. I hope they're helpful.
So that's, again, an introduction to mindfulness and grounding and a way to understand how we can affect that stress response system. So Megan, how are we doing on time? I have a part I can go quickly over if it's
we've got about I think we said till, are you here till 6? Is that correct?
Yeah, they said 45 minutes. So
you're fine. You can still got 15 more minutes.
Okay, excellent. All right. So what helps? So oftentimes, as we just saw, when we're under a lot of stress, we are not always able to stay in that calm, relaxed mode that allows us to be able to manage things that are happening, right? And to be able to communicate with people and be able to listen to people. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is, as you're working with your staff or your clients or your family members, focus on how well you're listening, right? Like Stephen Covey says here, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. So if you find, as everyone's stress level is heightened, that it's like, why aren't we communicating? Communication's breaking down, what's going on? Because everyone's remember, their frustration tolerance is a lot narrower, and they're not always able to communicate clearly. So one of the things you can do is implement some of these non-defensive listening tips. So for example, don't interrupt, right? So someone who is stressed out often just needs someone to listen to them. They need to vent, right? They don't need you to solve their problems or fix everything. They need to vent and get it off their mind. Show empathy. Again, with everything people are experiencing now, yes, we're all in the same boat, and we might want to talk about what we're going through, but if it's your job to help someone feel understood and heard, one of the things you need to do is be empathetic. Keep the focus on them and not you. Show empathy, not sympathy. So instead of, yeah, I feel sorry for you, or I feel bad for you, instead look at it as, I can try to put myself in your shoes and know that, yes, I would be really upset too, or I would be really stressed too, or I would be really angry. So empathy can go a long way for helping people calm back down and feel like someone's actually listening to them. No word games. So what that means is, don't try to catch someone saying something wrong, or, as if they're stressed, they're not always able to use their words properly, right? That's okay. Just have that understanding that their brain's not fully functioning, right? Not firing on all those cylinders. And don't try to catch people in mistakes. Just let it go. Any biases or judgments you may have about that person that you're working with or talking to, it helps if you let them go too. Just come to it as a human interacting with a human. And sometimes that can help create less walls that get built up around us when we do have those biases or judgments in place. Stay self-aware. Again, it goes back to that co-regulation. Am I getting stressed out? Because if I'm stressed out, I'm going to stress the people out around me, right? Like the teacher sets the mood in a classroom, right? So if she's calm, usually the students can remain calm. Although we don't know if that's going to happen for anyone in a couple weeks if school returns. But that's a whole nother training. Focus and stay in the present, right? Don't be doing 10 different things at once. If you're communicating with someone, let them know that they're the important person right then, and that you are there to listen to them, rather than they're wasting your time. So really focus on staying present. This again is going to help them stay present too, right? If you're all worried and thinking and looking around about all these other things, then that's going to come off to them, and they're going to feel that energy and not be able to stay calm or get calm and stay present also. And your body language, a lot of this right now, we're on phone calls and Zooms, right? There's not a lot of in-person interaction right now. So your breath, keep aware of your breath, right? Keep aware of your tone of voice and the pacing of your comments. That can also let the person know that you're calm, you're present, you're listening. Those are some of the things that you can do to help mitigate some of that, flipping your lid, I'm stressed out, you're not listening to me, and then their anger or frustration escalates. So one of the very best, and I've been I go to webinars probably 2 or 3 times a week on how to support people during COVID. And so one of the best resources I found that addresses everything is put out through NAMI, so our National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have organizations or offices in almost every county in the country. And so they put together this resource, information and resource booklet or book that they've been updating every few weeks. So, and I believe this whole slideshow will be shared with you so you have access to this link. Otherwise, it's on NAMI and it's really easy to find. But I'm going to go to it just to point out a couple of really helpful resources. And they have it both in English and in Spanish. So I'm just going to go to the table of contents so you can get a good idea of what all is in here. So, and of course, it has, general information about COVID. It talks about what are some of the health implications. So in the beginning, we were only worried about physical, medical, what's it doing to our lungs? What is COVID doing to our bodies? How does that affect us? We're realizing there's an equally important and detrimental impact on our mental well-being with all this isolation, shelter in place. You can open up your business. Yes, no, now you have to close it down again. You tried to get some money to help you pay your employees so you didn't have to shut down, and that didn't come through. So there's a lot of stress and anxiety around that's affecting our mental health. So it has information on that. Who can you reach out to? Where can I get support? I'm feeling disconnected from everyone and everything. What about if you lose someone to COVID? Who do you reach out to? Where can I find that help and support that I need so that I don't, so that my stress and worry doesn't become depression, anxiety, eventually possibly thoughts of suicide. So how can I keep myself safe as I feel these things escalating? And then, so it has some of the links to some of the most common valid resources for COVID information, which I really like. It talks about, again, am I going to work? Can I go to work? Is it safe? What should I be doing? What should I be watching out for? Of course, as we know, things change every day, right? The guideline that they give you last week might be totally different than what we get this week. But the main thing is our mental health is suffering from this. And so that's going to affect our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. So we want to watch for ways to mitigate that or buffer that by doing things that make us feel safe and happy. So one other thing down here, of course, sleep. I'm going to say one more thing for your mental health. Sleep is key. If we can do one thing to help our emotional well-being is get more sleep. I do a lot of work in suicide prevention and intervention and postvention. And the majority of the people who die by suicide or attempt suicide are experiencing sleep deprivation at the time of their attempt. And if you think about it, sleep is key. It's a key time for our brain to rejuvenate and renew and move all those things from our short-term memory into long-term memory. So it has a lot to do with learning. It helps us manage stress again. So if there's, actually I'm gonna say two things. If there's one thing you can do to help your emotional well-being, that is figure out how to get a good night's sleep. Our kids are not sleeping. Figure out how to, if you have children, help them get better sleep. The other thing is increased drug and alcohol use. Right now, that is definitely affecting a lot of people's ability to cope, right? We're overwhelmed. Some of us turn to drugs and alcohol to help numb or escape. And those are also things that can lead to higher depression, anxiety, and possibly thoughts of suicide. So sleep and then exercise, right? And diet, right? What we eat, right? If we eat crap, we feel like crap. So just some pillars of health that can help us manage this, because we don't know how long this is going to go on. So the more things that we're able to control ourselves that can help us feel better and stronger, the better, the longer we're going to be able to ride this out, and the better we're going to be able to ride this out. So I am going to open it up to questions or comments, discussions at this point, if Megan has received any.
Yep, I've got a couple. The first one was just, I think everyone enjoyed your YouTube videos that you shared. Is it possible to send out, and we can post them in the Facebook group for Mountain Minds Monday, but people would love to have access to those.
Absolutely. Yes, I will share those.
And then another question that came in was, going through talking to someone who's having a heightened moment of stress. I've been told in the past to respond with, "Tell me more." Do you have any other back pocket phrases to show empathy that don't require the distraction of thinking of like how to reply? Like kind of quick go-tos that people can have in their back pocket.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Tell me more. And other things like, as long as you're getting the ball back in their court quickly, like, so what all happened, or what was that like? That must have been really scary, or that must have been rough. Trying to normalize and validate what they're going through without us talking more, right? So the whole thing is to make our comments succinct and put that ball back in their court so that they can be telling more. But I like that. Tell me more, or what else happened, or what all are you experiencing? What was that like? Yeah, things like that.
Yeah. As a person who is experiencing it, I think a lot of times people have a natural ability or a natural desire to want to relate a common story, but then it feels like they're taking over. How should the person who's kind of having the heightened moment kind of signal that that's not the right reaction?
That's a really good question. And sometimes you can just say something like, what we were talking about, what I'm going through right now. Can we just go back to that now? And then you can tell me more about that experience. I really feel like I was just getting to share something important. And, can we just go back to that? Just bluntly say, hey, wait a minute. I was just starting to share. Can we go back to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. People, again, they think how they're going to reply. They are not even listening to us, but they're thinking, oh yeah, this thing happened to me. And we have to stop that, especially if we're working with someone with depression, anxiety, high stress levels. They need someone who will shut up and listen, right? Mm-hmm. And we're not always very good at that.
Someone was asking about your multi-day seminars and what was covered in them. Can you give us a little more detail?
Yeah. So on my website, lotuseducationalservices.com, you can see all the training. So I do worldwide evidence-based trainings like mental health first aid, which is out of Australia. And then Living Works is the world leader in suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention trainings. I do everything from 2 or 3 hours, half day, 1 day, 2 day trainings on mental health awareness, mental health literacy. If any of you haven't heard of mental health first aid, look that up. We are just now, like a lot of people, pivoting into offering everything online. So I finally got trained to offer a lot of these that were only in person, now online. So I'm going to be putting a lot of that up on my website. I do Center for Mind Body Medicine workshops, and that goes really deep into the grounding exercises, using dancing and shaking. Again, Center for Mind Body Medicine is a worldwide program that is trained facilitators all over to help people respond to trauma. And so those are soon going to be on the website, but they're not now. But the best way, email me anything about what I just presented to you here. I can make any training fit any organization, anything around mental health, stress reduction, mindfulness, wellness, etc. Suicide prevention, that's my number one passion. So those can all, most of that can be found on Lotus website, or soon will be up on there.
Got it. And then last one, are there any other like quick go-to grounding exercises that you can recommend? I feel like we talked a lot about the value of them, but like actual examples of them.
Yeah. Two of my favorites are, one of them is the, oh gosh, there's a word, relaxation. There's another word that goes before that, muscle relaxation. So it's where, and if you Google muscle relaxation, grounding exercise or whatever, it's where you start, like you start with your hands, you tense your fists and release, tense your fists and release. And you just go to each muscle group and do that. When you're stressed out, when you get to the end of that, your body just feels like, actually really calm. The other one is the 5 senses one. And a lot of people know this because when someone's having a panic attack or an extreme anxiety, we use the 5 senses grounding exercise. And that's where you say, can you tell me 5 things that you can see, right? So then the person starts looking, okay, I see this, I see this, I this. Tell me 4 things you can hear. So basically what it does is it takes them out of that anxious part of their brain and makes them think and focus and concentrate. So it increases that connection between their amygdala and their prefrontal cortex, and basically helps distract them out of that anxiety attack. So 5 things you see, hear, taste, smell, and feel. So again, you can Google that. That's a really good one too. There are so many breathing exercises that help. And actually on the further down on that NAMI resource booklet are links to a lot of good apps and websites for mindfulness training.
Thank you. Well, those are all the questions we've got.
Awesome. Thank you. Wonderful group out there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today, Marcia. For those of you who are watching, please encourage your friends and colleagues to check out the YouTube channel. They'll be able to see tonight's presentation. And if they subscribe, then they will get notified when it's time for next month's presentation. And I did fill in the additional details about Terry Jones, who will be our speaker for August 10th. So we invite you back to our YouTube channel in about a month, the second Monday of the month every month. And so with that, we're going to wrap up. And thank you so much for your time, Marcia. So excited about so many concrete things that we can do out of this short 1-hour presentation.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.